And good morning, everybody, and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber, and here we cover some of the most interesting live trials and legal stories in the news today. But today, we have something a little different for you. Let's talk about it right now. So, as you know, we've been recapping some of the biggest trials that we've covered in 2018 in anticipation of 2019. A little bit later on, we're going to talk to you about the most upcoming trials, the top most anticipated trials of 2019. Today, though, we're going to recap all of those trials where the victim had an opportunity to speak. You don't always see that. So starting up first, we're going to cover the Jeffrey Willis case, really remarkable case out of Michigan in the 11 a.m. hour. We're going to go over to Florida and recap the James Cawley case. What a horrific shooting that was. 12 p.m. hour, we're going to cover the trial of Quincinio Canada and Dewan Malazam. Very interesting case about a Marine who was killed, and the question is, who are the victims before this Marine was ultimately killed? 2 p.m. hour, we're going to turn over to the Cody Lott case. Really, really sad case where a victim, a 13-year-old girl, actually spoke out against the person she said did this to her. And then in the 3 p.m. hour, we're going to finally end the day with Sean Gray, that infamous serial killer out of Ohio. But right now, let's focus on the Jeffrey Willis case. Now, Jeffrey Willis is somebody we've seen in and out of the courtroom. Remember, we covered his trial in relation to the disappearance, the murder of Jessica Heeringa, a gas station clerk who disappeared back in 2013. Her body has never been found. The prosecution did something a little bit different. They actually tried to tie Mr. Willis to this crime by linking him to other crimes. You might remember that he got convicted in 2014 in connection with the shooting death of Rebecca Bletch, a jogger. And the prosecution tried to tie evidence from that crime to the Heeringa disappearance. You'll also recall that Mr. Willis was implicated in trying to abduct a teenager back in 2016. Evidence from that crime was used in the Heeringa case. And that teenager, she actually had an opportunity to speak in that courtroom against Jeffrey Willis. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the program. But let's take a step back, and when we're going to talk about Jeffrey Willis, we should start with Craig Harpsty. He's a witness who was actually an ExxonMobil gas station customer. He went to the gas station where Jessica Heeringa disappeared, last known place she was ever seen. What did he have to say about the night that she disappeared? Take a look.
911, where's your emergency?
I don't know if it's emergency. I just got working at the Exxon gas station.
Going to stop it right there just to verify. Is that your voice, sir?
Yes, it is, sir.
Remember Road, kind of covered Grand Haven.
Okay.
And there's nobody here. Wouldn't allow me to pump gas, but I just walked inside. There's nobody. There's a car here. There's another car out front. But it's very suspicious why there's nobody here.
So did you yell or anything? Or?
Yeah, I hollered, walked around the building.
There's been some testimony from some of your colleagues that were first responders on the scene about the condition of the interior. So let me ask you specifically, do you recall seeing whether or not there were any signs of any kind of struggle on the inside of the store?
No, there was not. Based on the pictures and based on what I have in my report, that when we went through it, you could see that the person, knowing now it's Jessica Heeringa, but she was in the process of cleaning up. And that means that the bathrooms were being cleaned, the garbage was just empty, and I did notice a different couple piles of dirt and debris where you sweep up, and she hadn't just put it in the dustpan yet. Garbage was at the back door. Looked like she was planning to, wrap it up, do the further duties, but it was a very clean environment.
Did there have been some question about whether or not she had mopped the floor or anything of that nature? Do you recall making any of those observations?
She had not mopped the floor yet. She was still in the process of actually sweeping, getting the debris up, and then they mopped the floor, as I was told by their procedure, and that hadn't happened yet.
Okay, let's break it down right now with juvenile judge, trial attorney, and fellow host here on the Law and Crime Network, Judge Ashley Willcott. Judge Ashley, great to see you again.
Good morning, Jesse.
So I got to ask you, if you're the defense, and you're sitting there and you're listening to the way this crime scene sounds, it's going to be pretty hard for you to say, oh, she just picked up and left. She just disappeared.
Yeah, it sounds like clearly something happened to her. She's in the middle of cleaning and she disappears. So I think there's no doubt she's disappeared. We don't know what happened to her, but I think the defense is going to say, so what? Who says our client did it?
Yeah, and we've seen this before in disappearance cases, and I think a little bit in this case where you try to look at phone records, photo evidence. Was there any sighting of her in the last, 5 years? And really, no. You know, it seems that there was foul play, and the question is, who was the last person at that gas station, and what happened to her? And, you know, Ashley, what we're going to do is when we come back, we are going to play the testimony of somebody who may have seen a van matching the van belonging to Jeffrey Willis, and that is really critical. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, a lot more to cover here on Law and Crime.
And were you present when that K-9 officer and the K-9 were actually searching that area?
Yes, I was. Trooper Bush came out. He had the dog at the time. Gave him a description of what we were looking for, you know, the background on it. And then from that point on, he searched the areas, both, you know, north, east, west, south, being the center point would be the gas station. That goes into a field. And then along a fence line that has a water, a ponder, I'd say, and then along the railroad tracks, and then across the street.
And did the trooper or the K-9 give you any indication or positive information about potential direction of travel or anything like that?
He basically said at the end, I mean, he was out there for quite a while, and as we were doing our investigation and I was interviewing people, he came back, I don't know, we're talking a couple hours. He said basically he felt that the scent ended right where we have the blood and we have the cover to the laser sight. He said he did not find any scent out in that field and then in the front at all.
Okay, discussion there on what was found at this crime scene. Ashley, one of the unique aspects of this case in talking about evidence is that the prosecution is basically using evidence from other crimes to implicate Willis here. Have you ever seen that happen before?
No, and it's really almost entirely a circumstantial case. So while I've seen many circumstantial cases, to use other crimes to link to this one is really a little bit of a stretch. Now we'll have to see how the evidence plays out, but they're really going for it in this case without a body and using circumstantial evidence, Jesse.
Well, we know that Jeffrey Willis's van could be a character in and of itself because it's believed that van was used in connection with the Rebecca Blech murder, and it was also believed that that may have been used when he tried to kidnap this teenager in 2016, allegedly tried to kidnap this teenager. Susan Follett worked at that gas station with Jessica Heeringa, and she's about to testify to maybe seeing this van the night of the disappearance. Take a look.
On Sternberg.
A silver van.
Okay. And where do you see the silver van?
It's in the parking lot, traveling east toward the store.
Okay. And could you take that stick in front of you and kind of show the jury where you first see this van?
Around about here.
Okay. And you said it's traveling east, so it's traveling towards the gas station. Is that right?
Yes.
And you guys are traveling in the same direction on Sternberg Road?
Correct.
Okay. Now, as you near the gas station, where is this van?
At like the whole time, they're just slightly in front of me. I'm back here. They're just slightly in front of me. They're pulling in here. I'm still going here. But at the back of the van, we're about parallel, probably because I'm going a little faster than he is at this point.
Okay.
At that time, as we're right here on Sternberg, I see the van come down and make a U-turn. And as he was facing the road, he turned off their lights.
Okay. As the Exxon station is kind of coming out of your view, you see this van turning behind the station itself.
Yes.
Okay. As you're passing the station, do you remember or have any recollection of seeing any vehicles parked in the parking lot of the station?
Jessica's.
You saw Jessica's?
Right out front.
And did you know the vehicle that Jessica drove?
Yes.
Let me show you a photograph here real quick. This is People's Exhibit 81. You recognize that car?
I do.
Whose car is it?
Jessica's.
All right, that's the car you saw parked? Is that a yes?
Yes.
All right. So you see that happen. What's going on in your mind?
Something wasn't right.
Okay. And what did you decide to do?
When we got to Harvey and Sternberg, I just looked at my ex-husband and said, something doesn't feel right, I'm going back. And he said, okay.
Okay.
That something doesn't feel right is an interesting statement because it's believed that she first thought that maybe Jessica was stealing from the gas station. Clearly that was not the case, so she understands that something might have been happening that wasn't quite that. Let's continue on with her testimony.
And where did you turn around?
At Bell Tire.
Okay. And what did you do next?
We just drove back.
Okay. And take your time, Miss Fowler. Take your time. You okay?
I'm fine.
Okay. You came back on Sternberg?
We did.
Okay. And can you show the jury what roadway you turned on, please?
When we were coming back west on Sternberg, we turned north on this little entry road to the parking lots.
Okay.
And drove right back here and parked in here.
Okay. So as you went north on that little service drive there next to the gas station, did you see that van again?
I did.
Where did you see it?
Just behind the building.
Okay. Now, so as you and Mr. Barber are parked over there in the parking lot, again, my understanding is you can only see kind of the front half of the van because of the light?
Correct.
And not the back half?
No.
However, explain to me the hatch thing. Do you actually see something move up? Or explain?
I can't remember if I actually see the door, but I see the light.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about this van. Now, Ashley, we believe that the van might have matched the one belonging to Jeffrey Willis, but that's not the only thing that's interesting about the van and its connection to the ExxonMobil gas station, is it?
No, it's not. So we were talking about on a break the fact that there was a gun and that he had used a gun in the other two crimes that you've already mentioned, the abduction of a 16-year-old that we have a surviving victim and a 2014 murder. And remember, the detective's testimony that we heard on the stand was inside the station, the Exxon station is exiting the back of the station. They found two little camera batteries or watch batteries that could be used in a camera, as well as a piece of the gun, the battery cover. And so they have that evidence, and then they have the van with the gun.
And let's not forget that gun, it's believed he stole that from his coworker. They were able to match that was the gun, that battery cover to the laser sight matched the gun that she had.
Right, absolutely. And so again, circumstantial evidence. Do you remember, Jesse, in the mall, those pictures where you'd look and they were all dots? And if you focus correctly, the dots would become an actual picture. I feel like that's
I was never really good at that, but I get the idea.
But the idea, right? And so I think in this case, we have all these little pieces and dots that are starting to come into focus and linking the defendant to this third crime.
You know, and Jeffrey Willis will say, hey, I was framed, and this was the botched investigation. I didn't have adequate counsel in any of this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But when we come back, we're going to take a quick break. A lot more to dissect and evidence in the Jeffrey Willis case. We'll be right back. And welcome back, everybody. So we're recapping the Jeffrey Willis case, really the disappearance of Jessica Heeringa. He was charged in connection with the disappearance and murder of this young woman. And where we last left off, we were trying to understand what was found at the crime scene. You know, this gas station, was there any evidence? And there was some evidence linking Mr. Willis to this crime. But things took a really bad turn for the defense when Detective Zachary Sparks from the Norton Shores Police Department took the stand. and explained some bad things that were found at Jeffrey Willis's grandfather's house. Take a look.
And there's
The section at the bottom identified with the square surrounding kit. Again, these are all identified with asterisks up until this vibrator bag, which has hash points after those, presumably the items that are in that bag. But it's the first item is identified with the number 2 in parentheses, 2 handcuffs and keys, restraint bar, hood, another 2 in parentheses, ball gags, restraint board with a question mark, toolbox, locks and keys, gloves, tape and washcloth, vibrator bullet, neck restraint, bag of rubber gloves, vibrator bag, and then this is the section where there's 4 items with hash marks below it. Under vibrator bag is vibrator, batteries with 2 in parentheses, condom, French tickler, and then this next item is a separate asterisk, zip ties, and then after zip ties in parentheses it says 19 small. The next item is needles, and after that in parentheses is the number 4, and then after that in parentheses is the number 7 big, which actually I believe the zip ties 19 small, 7 big is where that is supposed to be in conjunction. The needles with 4 I think is a separate item, but they do kind of interlace on those lines. And then the last item, this is the only part of this entire list that's in pencil, hook and rope.
Well, 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 Ashley. That letter, that crumpled note was found at his grandfather's house. What do you make of that?
It makes me want to throw up, first of all, because you see all the different items that could be used not only to restrain someone, but to sexually assault them and then kill them. I think that becomes one more piece of evidence that links him to the murder victim in this case. The other thing that's really important about it is it proves premeditation. So did he plan this with all of those items on this list? Absolutely. And nobody makes a list of items unless they either have them or plan to use them or are going to get them to commit the crime.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hard to argue that that list is for, a party or a camping trip or something like that. It's going to be really hard to argue that. Let's continue on, though, with Detective Zachary Sparks when he talks about something that they found in the basement of the grandfather's house. Take a look.
117.
This would be from standing in the same position of the prior picture. This would be me turning 90 degrees to the right and facing east. The landing of the stairs would be back over here to the left of that picture.
And finally, 118. What are we looking at here?
This is a picture of cleaning materials that were gathered by investigators and set in that area of the room prior to me taking the picture.
What was the significance of collecting all that?
It seemed unusual that there was so many cleaning materials gathered in one corner of the room.
So if I understand it correctly, the white bottles are what?
Clorox bleach.
And then the Tide and the other boxes are what?
The bottle is a Tide laundry detergent with bleach, and then there's 6 additional boxes of Tide with bleach powder.
Okay. So all those containers contain bleach, essentially.
At some point, they were all empty.
It's a good answer to a bad question. Prior to them being empty, those containers had the component of bleach in them. in some fashion, whether it be Clorox bleach, or Tide with bleach.
Yes, they were all identified as a product that included bleach.
Okay, and you kind of answered, but did any of those containers either contain liquid or powder?
The four, well, they were empty at the time that we were observing them.
And that's kind of the question I'm looking for. When you collected them, did any one of those Clorox bleach bottles, for example, have any more bleach in it?
No, they were empty.
The Tide liquid detergent, did that have any detergent with bleach left in it?
No.
And I think it's 4 or 5 boxes of Tide powder, did any of those have any of the powder left over?
No.
They were all empty?
Yes.
Okay, let's break this down right now. We're going back to Judge Ashley. Do you put so much weight on that evidence as much as you did the list?
I don't, but not until they connect the dots. I mean, that evidence indicates, we all know bleach is used to clean up, especially after if there's any blood, to get rid of all the evidence. So in and of itself, no, but when you look at it in conjunction with the list, Jesse, it certainly looks like he had a plan and it included cleaning up and there was no bleach left in some of those bottles.
Yeah, so this is just a case where maybe one piece of evidence wouldn't be enough, but when you combine it with that, when you combine it with the van, when you combine it with what we're going to talk about later, what was found on his computer, it just adds up. And he claims that he was framed.
Yeah, I don't know how he could have been framed with all these little pieces of evidence, but the prosecution's doing an excellent job in the order of witnesses, walking the jury through from what was found on the scene to then connecting the dots. And the van was seen and what was found in the grandfather's house and the list and the bleach. And so they're putting it all together, I think, to try to spoon feed the jury.
And that little bow on top of that whole evidence box really is what was on Jeffrey Willis's computer. When we come back, we're going to find out what was on it. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us here on a special day. It's called Victim Speaks Day, recapping all those trials from the past year where the victim took the stand. Let's talk about the trial that we're covering right now. We are going to continue our recap of the Jeffrey Willis case. Remember, he was implicated in the disappearance and murder of Jessica Heeringa, who disappeared from her gas station job back in 2013. Her body has never been found. Despite that really crucial piece of evidence, we always really need a body in order to successfully prosecute. Here, the prosecution is saying, let's take evidence from other crimes that he may or may not have been implicated in and use it to pinpoint him to this crime. And really, there's a lot of people who have testified so far about what they discovered at the gas station, what was found on Jeffrey Willis's computer, what was found at his grandfather's house, a lot of circumstantial evidence building up. But you know who would be really good to speak to? Somebody that knows or maybe knew Jeffrey Willis maybe better than anybody. Charlene Bishop, his ex-wife. She took the stand in the Jessica Heeringa trial. Take a look at what she had to say.
He just,
Okay.
that was something he shut down right away. He played Plants and Zombies for a very long time.
Okay. Now, so...
He was also on a website, I believe it's called Busted. They had a newspaper out,
okay,
and it shows like what people were busted for and shows their mugshot.
Okay. Were you aware at all, or did he share with you the tens of thousands of what I call, abduction, torture, rape, kill videos that he had downloaded?
No.
And did Grandpa Ham have kind of a routine for groceries? I mean, were there
Yes.
things that he just really enjoyed and had to have every single time?
Oh yeah, his list was basically the same every single week.
What did it contain?
Milk, strawberry preserves, peanut butter, Archway lemon frosted cookies, and of course cornflakes, several boxes at a time.
Okay.
When he passed away, there were 4 boxes in the cupboard.
Gotcha. Now, did you also, and since you were helping clean and maybe even were you doing any laundry at the time too?
No, I didn't do his laundry.
Wow. Okay, let's break this down right now with juvenile judge, trial attorney, and fellow host here on the Law and Crime Network, Judge Ashley Willcott. Pretty incredible. Do you think that she had any idea what Jeffrey Willis was really involved in, this dark side? I'm not even talking about him, involved with the Heeringa disappearance. I'm talking about what was found on his computer.
So I buy that she may not have looked at his computer and seen the videos, the porno of the neighbor. That I buy. Here's what I don't buy, Jesse. I do not believe that she did not have some intuition, gut feeling, or fear that he was up to something that was no good. I do not believe that she lived with this man and didn't have a sense of something is really amiss.
But isn't it possible people keep secrets from their spouses?
Absolutely. People always keep secrets from their spouses, even if they're a small white lie. But the problem I have, Jesse, is if someone is up to this type of activity and doing things of this caliber, I firmly believe that even if you're in denial, you have a sense or a gut feeling that something is not right.
So are you saying that she knew that he could be capable of this, that he was involved in dark things, that she didn't come forward first? I mean, what do you think really happened here?
I think she at least had an uh-oh, something's not right with him. I don't know what he's doing. Here's the other thing. I think often, and I've seen this in court as a judge, people feel an gut sense, and instead of investigating in order to take a next step and see what's up, like looking at a computer, they choose to live in denial and do nothing. Whereas if she'd ever chosen and said, I'm going to look at his computer and see what he's doing, those, however many hours in a row he's down there on his computer, she would have had an idea that something was really wrong.
Yeah, and look, she seemed to have a very close relationship with the grandfather, and we talked about it before, these items that were found in his house, a lot of cleaning supplies found in the basement. Again, one of the reasons she was brought on the stand is maybe to clarify what everything was about. Can she help explain why there were so many cleaning supplies? The implication by the state is that those were used to help make Jessica Heeringa disappear, to maybe clean up the crime scene. Let's see what she had to say about those cleaning supplies.
He would push the cart for support and then get the stuff on his list.
Okay. I want to show you. This is going to be People's Exhibit 118. Can you think of any reason why there'd be multiple Clorox bleach bottles and multiple boxes of Tide with bleach?
No.
In the basement?
No.
I mean,
that's way too many.
In the years that you cleaned,
I would throw those away.
Okay.
We would cut down the boxes, and what didn't fit in his trash, he had a weekly stipend of like one bag. Worked out with the garbage company, one bag, and what didn't fit would come to our house. I would bring it home and throw it in our trash.
So as far as you're concerned, when Grandpa, as the years that you helped when Grandpa was alive, this excess would not exist.
No, and it wouldn't be in the basement either, because he stopped going down in the basement.
Okay. The silver minivan that you own. My understanding and the stipulation is that was purchased March of 2013. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And whose idea was that?
Jeffrey's.
And was there a reason why? Because I know you've indicated you didn't have any kids.
Mm-mm.
Is that a yes?
We didn't have any kids.
Right. And was there a reason why? The need for a van?
More room.
Okay, let's first start off with what she said. Ashley, what did you make of her testimony and also relation to what was found at the grandfather's house?
I mean, the importance of it is to say, listen, after he passed away, it was vacant. When he was there, all of those bleach bottles, all of the Tide bottles would not have been in the basement. So somehow they got there after the fact. Then she places the defendant having access to the grandfather's house. And so it ties the bow, so to speak, on the package you talked about to indicate, yeah, he had access to that home. That stuff would not have been there until after the grandfather passed.
And again, maybe not in and of itself would be enough of evidence to say, hey, he had something to do with Heeringa, but circumstantial evidence, building up, everything from his computer to the crime scene. And then you and I had talked about it. We know something that this jury was not presented with. Kevin Blum, the cousin of Jeffrey Willis, had some interesting information to share, didn't he?
Yes, he did. So what he said to the police was, oh, by the way, I got a call from defendant. I go over to the house, and there's Jessica's body.
At the grandfather's house.
At the grandfather's house, right, Jesse? And I helped dispose of that body. Damning evidence, to be sure. However, he then recanted, and that was not used in this trial.
Yeah, and he was convicted of lying to the police and being an accessory after the fact to Heeringa's murder. So the question is, what really happened to her body? You know, one of the items that was listed on that list, that grocery list of all these strange items, was a gas canister. So how do you think her body, or what really happened to her?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that the police have used the police dogs, have searched for the body in all the different areas where they found evidence linking the defendant to this crime. At least that's the prosecution's theory. And they have not found the body. So that leads me to believe two things. Either one, she's been disposed of far away, not related to any of the potential crime scenes, or two, Jesse, they've done something like burn the body or dispose of the body in a way where the dogs cannot smell the scent. Here's the worst part to me. I think this defendant, but if not this defendant, someone knows exactly where her body is. So I'm prayerful. Maybe they'll come forward.
Yeah, you know, we always welcome more information in any kinds of these cases. Ashley, I want you to stand by. Remember, we're talking about Victim Speaks Day. When we come back, we're going to play you the testimony of Madison Nygaard, that young woman who says that Jeffrey Willis tried to kidnap her. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. So, you know, today we're recapping some of the biggest trials from 2018, and the theme today, Victim Speaks. You don't always get a victim being able to speak in a courtroom in a criminal trial. And here we're covering the Jeffrey Willis case. And who is the victim that spoke out? A young woman, teenager, named Madison Nygaard, who claims that in 2016, Jeffrey Willis tried to abduct her. Really important point for the prosecution because they want to connect evidence from that potential abduction to the Jessica Heeringa disappearance. Ms. Nygaard took the stand, and everybody was listening. Now, it should be noted, what we're about to play you is her testimony. We're going to have a shot right on Jeffrey Willis because she did not want to be filmed, but you will hear her words, and that doesn't change the impact of anything she had to say. Take a listen.
With you?
Yes.
Now, as it came time, and I don't know, I mean, how long, just so we get kind of a reference, approximately how long did this party go on for?
I can't remember. I was there all night.
You were there all night?
Yeah.
So we're not talking about a couple hours?
No.
Several hours?
Yes.
What happens next?
Jeffrey Willis pulled up.
Okay. Now, did you know Mr. Willis?
No.
Did you have any idea who he was?
No.
And this is, I guess, described for the jury, is this, you described the sun was coming up. What's the conditions of this?
It was bright up.
All right. And did Mr. Willis approach you on foot?
No.
How?
In his van.
Now, could you describe with the van, please?
It was silver van.
Okay, Ashley, pretty incredible that we have her speaking. What do you think the impact of this witness is for the jury listening?
Oh, significant. First of all, I think Jessie very lucky that she even survived. Second of all, the amount of details that she's able to give, her honesty to say, yes, I was drunk, yes, I'd been smoking, I was more sober by the time I walked home, and then every detail about what happened with this defendant, I think is incredibly impactful to a jury.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know what was even more impactful, or just extremely impactful, was the 911 phone call. These kinds of phone calls are amazing to hear because it's a real-time event, a real-time you're listening to what happened, and just there's not much more I can say. Just take a listen to this 911 phone call after she believes she was almost abducted. Take a listen.
Somebody else in the room is talking to the officers right now, okay? How old are you?
I'm 16.
You're 16?
Yes.
Okay, did you actually get in the vehicle?
Yes, he always.
So you were in the vehicle and jumped out?
Yes.
Right. Can you spell your last name for me?
I just heard so much pain.
Did she tell you to get in the van when he pulled the gun? No. When you got in the vehicle, why were you in the vehicle?
He was involved.
What was that?
He was involved, so I can call my mom.
Okay, were you walking and got in the vehicle?
I've been walking for 5 hours.
Okay. Where were you walking from?
From there.
From where?
From there.
Okay. We do have an officer on the way, okay? I just need to keep asking some questions so we can know what happened.
My mom.
Wow, incredible. So, Ashley, the question is, even if he almost abducted her, does that mean that he's necessarily guilty of kidnapping and murdering Jessica Heeringa?
Not at all. It's one more piece of circumstantial evidence. And if I were the defense, devil's advocate, that's exactly what I'm going to argue. Listen, even if he's found guilty of that crime, that does not say that he had anything to do with Jessica's disappearance. There's no linkage between the two. Now, that's not the prosecution's point, but that's what defense is going to argue.
And the idea here is to establish a pattern. If he's done this to one woman, he's doing it to multiple women, using the same kind of van. But there's problems with doing that, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Again, circumstantial, because, if I were defense, I'd say, so what? So he has a silver van. How many other people have silver vans? And keep in mind, prior testimony was all of the images that he had on his computer were of blondes who were white and 20 to 30 years old. Guess what? This 16-year-old doesn't fit those descriptions. And so defense is going to point that out and say, there's no relation. There's no correlation between the two.
And listen, you're making some great points, and we're going to have to see what the jury ultimately decides. I'm going to be signing off. Aaron Keller is going to be jumping in and guide you through the next chapter of the Jeffrey Willis case. We'll be right back.
Good morning, folks. Welcome back to Law and Crime. We are taking a look back at the Jeffrey Willis murder case out of Michigan with relation to gas station attendant Jessica Heeringa. Of course, Willis accused in a series of crimes in Michigan, and they all sort of rolled together into one neat package for prosecutors there. They had to use evidence from the Madison Nygaard kidnapping to then connect Willis to two other crimes. Madison Nygaard, one of the key witnesses here, the young woman who said that she was abducted and then she got away. Let's listen to some of her testimony.
When you jumped from the vehicle, what happened?
I started running.
All right. Well, let me back you up one step. Before you started running, did you just kind of land on your feet and then start running, or how did that happen?
I stepped out and then fell on the ground and then got up and ran.
Okay. And as you are running, do you get another look at this individual?
Yes, I turned around and looked at him.
All right. What's going on when you do that?
He was standing behind his van with his gun aimed at me.
All right. You sure about that?
Yes.
Do you recall, or are you saying anything?
I asked him, please don't shoot me.
Were you worried that that was going to happen?
Yes.
Do you recall at that point in time whether or not you still had your shoes on?
No, I don't. I don't think I did, but I don't know.
You don't remember whether or not?
I don't remember.
Okay. And do you recall at that point in time whether or not recognizing or seeing that you've been injured?
No.
All right. Ultimately, where do you run to?
A girl's house. A stranger's house.
Did you know this person?
No.
And what happens when you get to this house?
She was outside and she let me come in. She opened up her door a little bit so I could come in, and I ran in and I told her someone was after me and to call 911.
Okay. And did this woman in fact do that?
Yes.
Now, at some point in time, do you recall actually getting on the phone with dispatch? Talking to the dispatcher?
Yes.
All right.
Wow, this is really incredible testimony from the young woman, Madison Nygaard, who basically says this man sitting there in the defendant's chair asked if I needed help, called me over to his van, and then tried to take off with me, and it went downhill from there. Ashley Willcott is a juvenile court judge. She joins us on the on the broadcast this morning. So, Ashley, fellow Law and Crime host, this is your wheelhouse, as you said in an email yesterday, these juvenile matters, the horror that this young woman experienced, but she survived it, and she's the key to all these other cases, prosecutors have said.
Right, absolutely. So can you imagine, first of all, she admits at 16 she was at a party, she was drunk, there was marijuana involved, and then it goes from that of her acting like an adult, making all these decisions, to a horrific 911 call where she's begging and pleading and saying, I want my mom, I want my mom, I want my mom. So you then realize, Aaron, she's 16, she's a child, and this man put her through this. It is a miracle that she had the foresight to jump out of the car and survive this incident.
Exactly. And, you know, if I'm remembering my facts properly, didn't the gun jam? Didn't he actually try to pull the trigger, she said? And it's a miracle that she's here to testify about this.
Absolutely. That's my recollection as well. And she did say that she saw him standing by the van with the gun pointed at her. My recollection is as well that it did jam. I think this was all luck that she survived.
Exactly, exactly. But look, I mean, it was her running to the neighbor's house and placing the 911 call that we're about to hear yet again that led police to look for the van. And then the van led them to that defendant that you see sitting right there. And all of that information then led them to find little nuggets of evidence in the deaths of 2 other women. Let's listen to some more of that 911 call now.
When did he pull out the gun?
When I started getting out of the car, I don't want to do anything.
Okay, so he pulled the gun when you tried to get out?
Yeah.
What way did he leave?
He chased me. He was chasing me.
Where was he chasing you?
I don't know.
You don't know where he went?
No, he said he was at your house and we saw. I think I had a family. He was just kidding.
Okay. Were you assaulted at all?
No. But I don't need to go to the hospital. I jump out of the car.
Okay. Do you want an ambulance?
Yeah.
When are you injured?
All over again. All over me.
Wow. I mean, that's just sheer terror right there. Ashley Willcott, you deal with juvenile matters. Have you ever seen one quite like this?
Unfortunately, I have to admit to you, I've seen lots that are really similar in which juveniles are victims. They've been traumatized. They're lucky to escape with their life. I deal with a lot of abuse and neglect of children by parents, caretakers, and other individuals. So unfortunately, I've seen a lot similar to this. I'm going to say this, though, for her to take the actions that she did at 16. And I want to note exactly one piece of her testimony, Aaron. She said, they said, why'd you get out of the van? Why'd you jump out of the van? Because I thought he was going to hurt me. So the lesson is, even for children, because she's a child at 16, you better trust your instinct.
And that's probably what saved her life here, because who knows what would have happened if this continued on, if that van had been perhaps traveling at a higher rate of speed, if she wasn't able to escape. Because look, prosecutors have accused this guy of murdering 2 others. And it's this testimony from this young woman that led them to the van. Motor vehicle records led them to Jeffrey Willis. That led them to Jeffrey Willis's computer and that folder that said VICS, V-I-C-S. They say it was short for victims. And then there was information about these 2 other women, including Jessica Heeringa, who is one of the women who disappeared locally. Of course, the Rebecca Bletch case, a woman who was also killed, shot by the side of the road. Evidence linking this defendant to all of them. Ashley, I've got to ask you one more question, though. I always get uneasy just as a constitutional principle, an evidence principle, when juries hear about all these other cases to try to get one conviction, because it's like throwing all that 404 evidence and the rules of evidence at a defendant, and then juries see the defendant not just as a possible perpetrator of one crime, but is linked to all these crimes, and they feel the need to exact revenge because they see not just an accused killer, but an accused serial killer when all of this comes in at once.
Right, so it's a bad person, and they convict as a result of seeing this person as a bad person. Here's the thing, you know, there are a lot of rules of evidence, as you well know, that protect defendants from prejudicial evidence being introduced that's more prejudicial than probative. And so in this case, the prosecution had to be able to say, no, this is good evidence, it's probative, and it needs to come in to connect the dots. Now, in this particular case, the testimony we've heard so far, the prosecution is doing a really good job at connecting the dots to explain why this isn't about another victim, and that shouldn't color your decision about this defendant. Instead, it's connecting that other victim to the disappearance of this victim in this case.
Exactly. We're going to take a quick break here on the Law and Crime Network. When we come back, the verdict against defendant Jeffrey Willis. Welcome back yet again, folks. We're talking about the disappearance of Jessica Heeringa on the Law and Crime Network. Defendant Jeffrey Willis was accused of causing her death. Now, let's listen to the verdict as it came in.
Please rise. People versus Jeffrey Thomas Willis, case number 166040FC. Count 1, open murder. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of first-degree premeditated and first-degree felony murder. Count 2, kidnapping. Guilty.
Okay, thank you. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the verdict announced by the bailiff that you find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder based on both first-degree premeditated and first-degree felony murder.
And that was a verdict, and it was not much of a surprise to those of us who watched the trial in its entirety. But this was not the end. One of the most critical points of this was a statement that defendant Jeffrey Willis himself made when he was being sentenced. Now that.
The maxim, Occam's razor, which states, in explaining something, no more assumptions should be made than what is necessary, comes to mind here. The fact that one of Jessica's many lovers, Jess Ammerman, who was caught skulking around the station by the North Shores Police Department's Detective Casher that night, around that same time, was discounted as well. Sacrificed your well-being to forge a better America. My grandfather, Lawrence Wesley, fought to protect my presumption of innocence. Both believed, as my parents, Pamela and Lawrence, did, that all people are equal under the law and deserve this right. In Gideon v. Wainwright, the Supreme Court expounded, the right to counsel may not be fundamental and essential to fair trials in some countries, but it is in ours. I believe in Jesus Christ, and because of that, I can say this. Due to a lack of funding, a careless disregard for truth-seeking, the desire to reach a rash and inattentive conclusion to an unproven crime, or just plain falsifying evidence, not only has this promise been murdered, but also left to rot at the feet of a weeping Lady Justice.
Defendant Jeffrey Willis speaking at the end of the Jessica Heeringa murder case. Judge Ashley Willcott is still with me here on the Law and Crime Network. He has an excuse for everything. The only time he showed emotion is when he was talking about constitutional principles, legal principles, protecting the accused, and also a little bit about his own family.
Yeah, the only thing he's doing here, Aaron, is setting up an ineffective assistance of counsel claim, which is why he claims all his constitutional rights were violated. I'm not sympathetic because I think that the prosecution did an incredible job of convincing me after following the trial, based on circumstantial evidence, that he's the right defendant. Now, I am going to say this in closing, and that is, we don't have a body, so we don't know the manner of death or the method of death, or the cause of death, excuse me. So we don't know, A, that she's dead. We don't know if it might have been natural causes, accident, suicide, homicide, and we don't know the specific injury or disease that caused her death if she is dead. So that's the one thing that really bothers me in this case.
I agree with that as well, but and look, I mean, we have seen stronger cases here on the Law and Crime Network. If we're to characterize things weak to strong, we've certainly seen stronger cases, but here the mountain of evidence was built one grain at a time, you could say, and it finally added all up. Ashley, I know you're going to be with us here on the Flip Hour, but coming up here in the 11 o'clock hour here on the Law and Crime Network, we're going to look at the James Cawley case from Florida. That's a double murder involving each person having a new lover after a divorce. Also, the Kelsey Barrett case in Colorado. Updates in that when we return after this break.